Hello. Today we are tuning in to do a special Sol y Lunar report. Dayana Robinson, and this is Martin Comtois.
Yo.
This special report is going to be focused on how fall is here, and we have a big eclipse season coming. And so Martin has been thinking and sharing a lot about that, and I've been doing some studies, but he is a wealth of knowledge, and he's had a lot of things and studies he wants to share with us. So Martin.
Well, it's kind of the WTF is going on. I don't know about you guys, but there's a certain tension in the air, and I was in my dreams, often in my dreams, I will do a chart analysis and astrological analysis. And at the end of my dream, this sentence came, the fall of the fall. So the fall of the fall, or the autumn of the fall. And what does that mean? This is a study of the eclipse season for the fall of 2022 and the effect of the Saturn Uranus square in our times. So, yeah, the fall of the fall and what WTF is going on. Do you feel some tension in the air?
Yeah, for sure.
And,
yeah.
And yeah, I think that it's hard to just completely narrow it down. I think a lot of my process recently has been to understand what that is and understanding the effect of this Saturn Uranus square. We've talked a lot about the Saturn Uranus square, and what do you feel about the Saturn Uranus square, and how has it been triggering your process?
When I sit with the Saturn Uranus square that's been in and out for past few years now, really, I see and feel this big changing of authority within myself. So who I give my authority to, what really is my truth in authority figure within myself. So the part of myself that will either praise or condemn aspects of myself, but then the other part of me is the part of me that wants to be free or fight for the future or see new potentials and new ways and discipline myself in that focus. And then I also see that in society where we've been going through a massive constraining and trying time the last couple of years, and then the aftermath of that. And there's this big, first that conjunction was 2020, Saturn and Uranus, and then they come into this square, and there's this different tension and different perspective of the tightness that happened in 2020, not just the pandemic or whatever, but all the aspects of life that happened. Like almost everybody I know, their life changed in some means. And was talking to a mentor of mine yesterday, actually, and she was sharing how whoever you were before 2020, it's like it's almost irrelevant. That was just a piece and a stepping stone to where you are now, and we're in a completely different evolution of ourselves.
Right. So that's, you were talking about the Saturn Pluto square. This is here is the chart of February, and we're going to show you quite a bit of charts today. This is a in-depth study of this coming eclipse that we're going to be talking about. And so this is all of the squares of Saturn and Uranus that taken place in 2021. So February of 2021, 7 degree. This is the chart. We have a Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Moon, Uranus square when that comes in, right? And that's the winter of 2021. Then second square, exact square, 6/15, so June of 2021 at 13, and then 12, December 25th, Christmas of 2021. And so we felt that one through most of the winter. And then 10/8/22, so November, we're so it's never October, yes, it's never exact. The fourth one is within 1 degree for a period of about 3 months. So the Saturn Uranus, we have a lot of different videos on the channel, in the Astrology of the Great Reset videos playlist. You'll find all kinds of videos on this Saturn Uranus square, and now we're going into it. But something nice to know about an alignment. And a planetary alignment is like a wave. At the beginning, it's before it gets too close, it's like you don't see it. Like when you see in the ocean a wave, you don't see it, but as it comes closer to the shore, it starts showing up, right? So you got the wave and it builds as it gets closer to breaking, it gets bigger and bigger, and then it breaks, and then it's felt into the beach, right? So that's like a wave, so planetary alignment is like that. So we've had 4 exact squares of Saturn and Uranus. So this intensity has built, it built and built and built and built. And now we're at the end of the crest of the wave, so then we're going to show you the chart of this next full moon. And the reason I wanted to do this, and again, usually we do the new moon and the full moon reports, and this is a solely lunar report, but we jumped ahead a few moons here because I think a lot of us have the question, and if you look at the news and if you look at everybody, everybody's kind of fully anticipating the great fall, the economic systems, the healing, the healthcare system, the political breakdowns that are going on, the wars, the incredible tension, again, and when we were talking about this, the emerging of those Saturn Uranus squares during 2021, they're almost exactly synchronous with the waves of COVID. But now we're coming to this 4th wave, and we're in it right now. Right now, Uranus and Saturn are within 1 degree, and they will continue to be that all the way through November. There's this Saturn-Uranus tension. But as we were analyzing it a few months ago, we thought, well, this is not going to be about COVID so much as it's going to be socio-political and economic crisis that is deepening. It's almost as if, the fall of the system. At the same time, can we expect things to change drastically? I think one thing for sure is we're going to be adjusting. We're going to be feeling this wave long into, the end of this decade. We're going to be tabulating and analyzing the effects of what we just been through, and this and this next phase of time is really important.
When you were going back there, can we pull up those squares that you would so nicely put together? Because I was thinking about it, like, I kind of forget all the events. I remember, to be honest, a lot of it feels hard to access as it was kind of traumatic at points. But like I think about last year at Christmas, that was one of the squares. And I remember that was one for, at least in Canada here, we were hitting a huge peak in revolt against the government as the truckers were having a hard time with the control.
Well, that came in the winter of 2022 when there was that pushback. But if you look at the Saturn Uranus square, it's active. Actually, I'm going to show you a bunch of charts on that, and we'll get into that discussion again. And the reason I put this slide here is so that we could go back to it. But let's so
because then going back, that's last summer, like I remember a lot of people having this hope for a fun summer last year, and that didn't really happen. Like this year's been a lot more open here in Canada and a lot of fun things are happening again, but last summer there was this hope for it, and then it didn't happen. And so yet again, that's kind of after this square again, hey?
So we're going to go through, like I said, a lot of charts here. And so this is the Scorpio new moon partial solar eclipse. Now, eclipse seasons are really important. I like to call them markers on the highway to life, the mile marker. At the eclipse season, one gets to check in to know, the sun and the moon and the earth are in exact alignment with the nodal axis, creating kind of a check-in with my fate, how am I doing? The North Node being what I'm working towards, the South Node where I'm coming from, the moon, my ancestral line, my mother, the son, the father line, all of that comes together. And so here we have this solar eclipse. Now we won't see this solar eclipse. It will be seen in Africa, and it's got the Mercury-Venus conjunction. That Mercury-Venus conjunction, we're going to see it throughout the fall. Whoops. And come back. And then so some of the important things, Jupiter's coming back into Pisces, moving towards Neptune. We're going to see that Neptune, Jupiter, almost conjunction for Christmas, which gives me a feeling that things are going to be much easier come Christmas time. But that leading to this eclipse season, we see that Saturn Uranus square here. And then what's interesting about this eclipse is 2 days before it, Saturn turns direct. So now Saturn will be moving towards Pisces, Uranus moving towards Aries. So they'll be separating quite rapidly. And so that by the beginning of next year, Saturn will be in Pisces, and we're done with that Saturn-Uranus square. So this is kind of the last hurrah. The other thing too is Mars is just about to turn retrograde and is in a grand trine with Saturn, and that four-way conjunction here with Mercury, Venus, and the moon and the sun. And here's that nodal axis here. So that's, anything within 18 degrees of the nodal axis is a eclipse. And we'll see that through the charts that we'll explore. What do you see in the chart as well? Or do you have any questions about that?
I'm interested to see how that's going to pan out with the Mars, Saturn, Mercury, all of those being in air signs and in that grand trine. I know it's kind of pulling in the moon, sun, and Venus too, but really that air grand trine, I wonder if it could lead to, especially that Saturn being part of that, like action and thought process and will towards more discipline and how we think and how we structure society and ourselves and work within the world, which could be a reflection and an outcome of the end of that Saturn Uranus square, is, as you say, and as we kind of start to see, is that after the square is almost when the aftermath, like you were saying, we feel the ripple effects. And I wonder if we have to like feel the ripple effects in changing and witnessing how our thoughts and communication change in contrast to it.
Well, you're exactly right. That the Mercury, Mars, Saturn, discipline, willful communication, I don't think anybody is going to be shy to express how they feel. That Jupiter, Neptune's going to add some mystical, and then that Saturn Uranus square. Let's look at, so this is the new moon of the eclipse season, and then the next one is on November 8th. And now you see, look at that, the Saturn Uranus square, the moon, and then we have North Node, all in exact conjunction with Uranus, moon, Saturn. So
that looks intense.
Well, I think that the intensity that's building is going to really be released by then. That's I think is that the key moment. I think that whatever economic, socio-political, I think that leading to November 8th, it's bound to be quite tense, and probably afterwards. So that, and again, Jupiter, Neptune, but that's, what's interesting, and what I'm going to be showing you is how this T square is manifested throughout 2021. And so this is not the first time we see this. And so there's a certain continuity in what we're going through collectively, and personally as well. So yes, it feels intense. So now let's look back. Let's look back a little bit. Let's look back at May 15, 2022. So that's about, well, not quite 6 months ago. And we see moon, we see Uranus and the sun also in eclipse. So that is a Scorpio lunar eclipse as well. Now this last one, this one that we're going through, November 8th, is also a lunar eclipse. And this one will be visible for us throughout North America. And it'll be at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we'll have to stay late up to see it. But that's going to be quite a dramatic show. And we had the same T-square with Saturn and also with Jupiter, Neptune, all of that. That was a very powerful full moon. And then you see that Saturn Uranus square with Mercury. So that's May 15th. And then if we go another 6 months, the next eclipse before that, okay? So this is one eclipse. And then the last one before this last lunar eclipse, and then the last one before that, that's November 19th. Again, moon in conjunction with the nodal nodes. Moon is still pretty far from Uranus, but then we have again Mars and Mercury, and then they go to Jupiter and Saturn. And what we've experienced in 2020 is a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. So now Jupiter and Saturn are moving away. So this is 2021, November of 2021. That was May of 2022. And then this is the 4th of November. So exactly a year ago, we have Sun, Moon, Uranus, Saturn, with Mercury and Mars. So this is a familiar tension that we've been experiencing and that's been evolving, and these T-squares. It's quite amazing to be witnessing that, isn't it? Anything jumps up at you?
I'm just thinking back to what was going on in my life and in the world at that time.
So,
And
go ahead.
there was a lot of how do I say, reckoning with the authority structures of our society in my personal process.
In between those two eclipses, but that was kind of the pushback, the beginning of the pushback. We were really fed up by then. Let's look at a little bit further before. So here we have May 2021. So that's during the Saturn Uranus. It was in June. And now we have a sun and a moon conjunction triggering the new moon. So this is not an eclipse, but it's close to an eclipse. And it triggers the Saturn Uranus square almost exactly. And then we have here, what do we got here? The Scorpio full moon. The dates are, I can't see the date because of the way but here we have, and this is the most like the one we just saw, where we have Mercury, Venus, Uranus, Sun, and then we have that moon, Mars, Jupiter, water grand trine. It really looks almost like this one, doesn't it? Right, with Mercury, it's like the same T-square. So if you look at it, that evolution of that T-square.
When you see a T-square, what is a couple points that you notice from T-squares? When you see a T-square, you're like, oh, this usually signifies.
So what we're talking about in T-square, we're talking about
My position.
this red triangle there. It's a
Yeah.
T. It forms a T. If you go from here to here and to here, you have a T cross. And so here's the T cross here, and here's the T cross. So we're looking at the history of that T cross or that T square. A square is one red line, that's 90 degrees. A T square is 290 degrees and 180 degrees, forming that red triangle there. And so what do we experience when you experience a T square? And you can look in your chart as well, a T square, this T square, right? So when we experience a T square, when we have T squares in our chart, there's a choice. There's a choice of which of the two you're gonna live and which, because there's so much tension between the three that we will find two that we can get along with the third planet being the one that carries the shadow or carries the difficulties. Two, so it depends. We have choices to integrate whatever feels right to us. So when you're analyzing a T square in your own individual chart, you're looking at what archetypes, planetary archetypes are involved, and you look at where, so in a Saturn Uranus Sun T square, then the Sun Saturn would be discipline, the Sun Uranus would be revolutionary. So which one would you play? Would you be Saturnian or you be Uranian? And Saturn and Uranus are very difficult and contradictory archetype. There's one video that we did a while back ago about this this polarity that exists between Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn was rebelled against Uranus, the sky god, and castrated him. And so that's a myth in Greek mythology, so that the Saturn became the king of the god by overthrowing Uranus, by castrating him. And that's a very, very, if we look at what we went through, the Saturnian control castrated the need to evolve, right? So then the Saturn discipline and mastery, but also control, and Uranus the need to bring about enlightenment and evolution and freedom, and so then this tension between the two has grown. And now we see that, Uranus is getting back, the strong side of the show throughout this whole process. Does that make sense? So then let's look at this this T square here, and from what we just learned now, let's look at it. So this is this is the one that came. So that's in April of 2021. So right before this one, so it's the full moon right before this full moon. So this is this new moon here. So it's in April, and here we have moon, Saturn, Sun, Uranus, Mercury, and Venus in a T square. And again, that's very, very similar to the one that we're going through right now. And let's analyze this one. So Taurus, full moon, lunar eclipse. This is a full visible eclipse at 3 o'clock on the West Coast. And so it'll be earlier. Anyway, so Tuesday, November 8th. And so here we have.
Yeah, so it could even be Monday night for people on the East Coast.
It will be in Monday night for
Yeah.
us too. Yeah. Well, yes, it'll be in the night between Monday and Tuesday for sure. And then they're 3 hours ahead of us. So it will, anyway, I can't think that what that's going to look like. But here we have Moon, Uranus, Saturn, Mercury, and Venus. So that, and the North Node. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then because the North Node are involved, the South Node are involved too. And because it's in complete alignment, then that Saturn Uranus square becomes really personal, right? The sun and the moon is about us, and then Mercury, how we communicate and gather information, and Venus, and also that's in the sign of Mars, and Mars and Mercury are mutual reception, so that Mars plays a big role. But let's flesh out this, what is a Sun, Mercury, Venus would look like, psychologically. This would be a solar deity that would be very creative, Venus, and very communicative, and very profound Scorpio, so there's a deep intensity of personality, a creativity, but that's, that Scorpio intensity. And then Saturn and Aquarius, Saturn is exalted there, and it's a very strong Saturn who seeks to bring order into society out of chaos, who seeks to, there's a really utopic alignment, even the people that control, they think that they're doing it for the best, and so then that's the problem with the control, is that they, it always seems to be motivated by the best of intentions, and so then of course Uranus doubts that, because Uranus was castrated by Saturn, so then that Moon Uranus North Node conjunction, so then the revolutionary, so then how would you feel? What would you, if this was going on into your chart, this T-square? So look at this T-square and where it falls into your chart. Can you do that from memory, where it falls into your chart?
Yeah.
So do you have any planets that are being triggered by that?
Yeah, not by Saturn as a planet, but the Sun, Mercury, Venus. Could you move the little gray guy there quickly?
The little gray
the little block there. So the 16 degrees, 15 degrees, Venus on 20 degrees. So Venus is right over my Jupiter.
So Jupiter is here.
Yeah, and then on the right on the other side by 2 degrees is my Venus North Node conjunct.
Over here?
No, on the other side of the conjunction of
Okay.
Sun and Mercury.
So Venus, Jupiter, and the node. So you're going through your half nodal return. So this should be a very powerful full moon for you. And then Uranus and Saturn have been T-squaring that Venus Jupiter. So you've been feeling this tension quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, it actually brought me to the conversation earlier where I struggle with wanting to do society's game, and then also wanting to not give into the parts of the society game that I find so frustrating and damaging, and not something I want to support for future generations. And as you were explaining, and I saw that process, like Uranus and Saturn's pull within me.
For me, I have Moon Uranus conjunction right here.
So you're getting a Saturn opposition?
Well, no, the Moon Uranus conjunction is in square to my Moon Uranus conjunction, which is in opposite to Saturn. So the Moon Uranus has been triggered throughout 2021 by this Uranus Saturn, a need to really live the revolutionary moon, really connected with my mother, and how my mother broke all of the rules of raising us and kind of destroyed all the structures of Saturn. I still have a real hard time. For me, Uranus is much more, you know, a very, you know, dominant archetype because of that Moon-Uranus conjunction. Although I have Saturn also situated really strongly, I have a real hard time manifesting that. And so that T-square, that's been really felt by me. So that's interesting how that can be experienced. So how do you feel about this exploration so far?
Good, a little nervous, but also a little bit more, maybe hopefully aware of how to navigate these energies in the coming weeks and month here. Not that a bit, 2 months really.
The reason I wanted to do this video, and you know, I know there was a surprise for you because you didn't get to prepare for it, but I felt with all these charts, but to get a sense of perspective of, you know, what you know, WTF, you know, we've been all summer and then coming into this fall, you know, the big questions that we have is what's next, you know, where do we go from here, you know? And so then this clarity of understanding this real intense period that we're going through right now, and how, you know, it's hard on everybody. And we don't really know where the problem is. And because everywhere you look, it's really kind of seems like it's falling apart.
Yeah.
And yet this experience of falling apart has been going on through the last 3 years, and we can see the same T-square that we're going to be experiencing on November 8th is a T-square we've experienced numerous times, and it's kind of the conclusion of it. And so now we find out, you know, did we learn our lessons? Are we prepared? And I think, like you said, you know, a lot of us are completely different people than we were when this whole show started. And then if you look back, you know, before that, you know, with the Uranus Pluto square, and then the Saturn Pluto conjunction, and the 3 Jupiter Pluto conjunction that made the crisis in 2020. Then in 2021, the 3 Uranus Saturn square, and then this last one. And then that's kind of what I look at, and I want to show you this also. Go ahead.
I was just gonna share that I also it hit me as you were sharing just now that we have this square, and you're explaining a T-square, and when you were explaining the T-square and how you can kind of, there's 3 in relationship, 3 key parts of the chart, and usually 2 take the run and 1 holds the unconscious. It's kind of how I understood. That feeling is what's been the kind of the feeling this year. It feels like 2022, there's so many 2s, and there's this big duality that was pulled out of us throughout the last couple of years. And then there's this reckoning with duality. How do we move about society when we have these 2 strong opposing ideas about, feels like everything in life there's an opposing idea. And then when you don't learn to merge those 2, something takes the unconscious fall, and then that's where I witness the pains and the wounds can happen, or the neurosis and the unconscious burying of our feelings, needs, thoughts, healing process. And so for me, I hope that this is a enlightening way to wrap up this 2022, or the catch-22 year that I call it sometimes, where it's a lot of us feel like we've just lost 2 years. But how can we make the most out of that? And what is a way to move through this with trying to be aware of the fact that these strong energies, and learning how to integrate them, and how to allow them to have relationship with each other versus cut one off.
Yeah, that's very interesting, you know, thinking about losing those years. I think that most of us, I know for myself, you know, without these last 2 years, my astrology wouldn't have evolved. My work wouldn't have evolved the way it has evolved. So in a sense, it was a huge blessing for countercultural folks, because, and I think, you know, the Saturn Uranus square, you know, the revolutionary and the discipline of Saturn, if they work together, you know, and that's the lesson of a T square, is usually one of the sides gets gets left out and not lived. But if you're able to live all 3 points, so if you're able to have the discipline to be a revolutionary, to really be much more disciplined into your Uranian practice of bringing light into the world, of bringing evolution, we're facing challenges right now that will take our best to really resolve. We're going to have to show up to our best potential. And one of the things, that's really nice, after this full moon, this eclipse, then the story becomes Jupiter and Neptune, and they become close. And we saw a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction at the beginning of the year, and it was really dreamy. And so we're going to see that take over in the end of November and into December and Christmas. We have that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which will bring a lot of spirituality and spirit. And so things will shift. And then 2023 is going to be a completely different animal in terms of the challenge that we're facing. But also we're going to have major shifts of Saturn coming into Pisces and Pluto coming into Aquarius. That comes at springtime, and so that Saturn Uranus square will have dissolved by then, and we'll be looking in 2023 to a Jupiter Chiron conjunction, which will really bring a lot to the wounded healer. And so, and then gradually the building of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but that's for further details. How is this for you, my dear?
It was great. I think there's a lot of things to chew and sit with. I hope, like me, you guys got some pieces of things to sit with and reflect on, and maybe even give you some better understanding of what your process has been as we've been called in all these ways to evolve.
And so the important dates, so October 22nd, Saturn stations direct. And so that will be energetically felt. And then right after that, the Scorpio new moon solar eclipse. Then on the 29th, Jupiter retrograde ingresses back into Pisces. That's also going to be felt energetically. And then October 30th, Mars turns retrograde, and that Mars spends 7 months in Gemini, and that Mars is in square to that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that's growing. And so that will be responsible for a lot of the energies we'll see as winter come. And then that powerful Taurus full moon lunar eclipse on November 8th. Pay attention to that. This was a lot of fun, my dear.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You got anything else in closing?
No, I think I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
We will do another video next week for where are we at? Full moon in Aries. That should be fun.
That will be really fun. Stay tuned for that. And also please subscribe. And last week we asked you to push the like button, and we've got the most likes of our on our video, and that got the algorithms to really appreciate. And so then our video got twice as many views because there was lots of likes. So pressing the like button, and then also subscribing to the channel, and if you can share these videos with your friends, we really appreciate it. It helps us grow.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good luck to you in your process.
Yes, and then we'll just have a little closing slide, which is the Healer and the Dreamer Astrology. If you want to reach out, Spirit of the Times 108@gmail.com for a reading. And here's day-to-day healing, her contact. Always an honor to be of service. We'll catch you down the road. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Be well.